Brawl Stars is one of the most loved Supercell games, however, it has had its fair share of controversy, and today we'll be going over every major controversy the game has gone through. So let's get right into it. First of all, we have a controversy from before the global launch of the game, and that was the removal of the top hat from the default Mortis skin. Now, this does seem a bit crazy, but Mortis was one of the original brawlers, and he was also arguably the most famous one, and something very recognizable about him was his top hat. So when he got remodeled in September of 2018 and people saw that he no longer had the top hat, it made a lot of people upset. And this was really like the first sort of controversy the game had, but a week before global launch, the top hat Mortis skin was added and it was free for everyone. So that just helped make up for it. So overall, the first controversy in the game really wasn't that bad. However, the next one would be worse, and it actually came in the update that fixed the Mortis situation, and this was the addition of Leon. Leon was really like the first case of a new brawler just being completely broken and overpowered, and this made the global release of the game a little shaky. Many people would say that Brawl Stars was going pay to win, or that they were super greedy or something, because this was a legendary brawler that obviously cost more than the other rarities, and he also just happened to be extremely good. No one had ever seen a brawler this good and game changing before, and it just made a ton of people upset because it was obviously very unfair. And we have had multiple more cases like this with brawlers just being extremely strong on release. However, I'm not going to really talk about them since I feel like the Leon situation basically encompasses what all of them were like, and this one is the most significant one as it was the first. Leon would end up getting an emergency nerf just 2 days after his release, and he would end up getting a few more nerfs over the next few months, and this did help make it a lot better. However, the impact was still big because people realized how crazy the game could become if there was just one brawler that was way better than the rest. But after that, the game was doing pretty well for a while until the next controversy, which would be in November of 2021. Now, this really had like two main parts, with the first part being with the gears and the second part being with the power levels. This update would add the gears into the game, and while they are seen as a pretty good thing now, back then they were very different. The gears were really seen as like the worst feature in the game because they were just so expensive, and this made people feel like the gears were very pay to win and that Supercell was just being greedy. It was just really hard to get the gears, and the whole system around them also just brought forward a lot more complexity with things like the gear tokens, gear scraps, and just a whole leveling system for the gears. These would just make it a lot harder to max out a brawler, and it just slowed down progression, and overall the whole system just wasn't what people liked. The gears as a concept themselves were good, and we have seen how successful they are now. However, the problem with this update would just have been the whole implementation of the gears and not really the gears themselves. There would have been a couple of changes made over the next few months to try and make the gears better. However, the gears would just end up getting completely reworked a little less than a year later, and this would fix many of the original problems and would just make the gears a lot more loved. But the second thing in the November update was the addition of 2 power levels, and this was also a massive deal and just added on to the whole gear situation. Before this, the max power level was 9, and that is what it was ever since the release of the game. So the first addition of a new power level was actually 2 more power levels, and that was quite a lot to do at once. When you pair this with the gears, it definitely made it seem like Supercell was being greedy because it would take a lot of resources to move up 2 whole power levels for your brawlers, along with getting the gears and stuff for them. There was nothing really done to try and fix the power level issue. However, it has been long enough that it isn't an issue anymore, and I suppose it was just supposed to be a long-term thing by Supercell, but it did cause a lot of controversy at the time and was the most amount of hate the game got up until that point. But then about a year after that, the Brawl boxes were removed at the end of 2022, and this would obviously be very controversial. People were pretty split over the boxes, as some people saw them as pay to win, while others just didn't care and actually liked the boxes because they were just fun. The boxes were the main progression system in the game, so it would be important for them to be relatively balanced for everyone, and that is most likely why they were removed. The boxes heavily favored the people that could pay for more boxes, and that would technically make them pay to win. However, I believe that the boxes were still fine for the average free-to-play player. So their removal would be controversial with people really being split about it, and it was also just a massive deal because the boxes had been in the game since the beginning. Outside of the pay to win aspect or whatever, the boxes were also just a really iconic part of the game, and no one could really imagine Brawl Stars without the Brawl boxes. In order to kind of make up for this, they would end up adding the star drops in the summer of 2023, and more recently we also saw the boxes versus drops event in which we did get the boxes back for a little bit, which was nice, but overall it seems like most people have moved on from the boxes and have accepted the star drops as a good compromise. But after the removal of the boxes, the next controversy would be the addition of the hypercharges, and I'd say that this is the biggest controversy the game has ever had. For this, many people were saying that this was just completely pay to win because the hypercharges were expensive and also just really strong, and that would mean paying people would have an advantage and that would make it pay to win. It was really the worst at the beginning with the bundles and just with all of them being added at once, since that would overwhelm players. But as the hypercharges got rolled out more, people eventually had time to catch up, and there were also some balances made to make things better, and by this point the hypercharges aren't really that big of a problem. But then after that, we would start to see the early access bundles coming out for new brawlers at the end of 2023, and this would really be the next controversy. Many players were against this because these brawlers were quite expensive and they would also just be really strong, and that made this something that could be considered pay to win. Also, this meant that we would no longer really get any more brawlers for free in early access, since that whole system got replaced with the paid bundles. The case was especially bad for brawlers like Larry and Lori or Kit, just because they were so good, and that made tons of people just buy them, and that would just become a big problem in the game for multiple reasons that we won't bother getting into in this video. But overall, the early access bundles are seen as a pretty controversial thing in the game, though they definitely aren't as bad as some of the other things we have talked about. And for the next controversy, we have something similar, and that is just changing the Brawl Pass to cost real money instead of gems. Many players used to rely on just getting gems and using them to buy the Brawl Pass, and this would be a way for them to get the pass for free, and was overall a good thing for every free-to-play player. But starting in 2024, the Brawl Pass was changed to cost real money, and that was very controversial, as now it would be impossible for a free-to-play player to get the pass. Even though Supercell said that the progression wouldn't be changed for the free-to-play players, it still sucked that they wouldn't get the opportunity to just complete the Brawl Pass and get some of the cosmetic items. And it seems like Supercell isn't going to do anything about it, and people are just going to have to adjust. But finally, the most recent big controversy with the game was with Supercell Make. This was for the Bell campaign in which this skin won, and that is where the controversy was. Many people really didn't like the fact that another edgy purple skin won, since that just seemed to be the pattern with a lot of the last few campaigns, but it would be this one that really made the situation explode, and even Supercell would acknowledge it somewhat recently. Now, this obviously isn't like the end of the world, and the overall situation did just blow over pretty quickly. However, it was a big deal when it happened, and there are still plenty of memes relating to it today. But that's also it for this video. Let me know if I am missing any other major controversies, but with that, I'll see you all in the next one.